last 8 years or so when we started this, we've been able to talk to just hundreds and hundreds of owners and different clients, some that have gotten puppies from us, some that have their own from other breeders, and they call us and they really just are trying to find out where to start. And I was in their shoes 10 years ago, right? And that's when I first started looking at getting a dog. I wanted to train it myself, and what I try to encourage people is that anybody can train their own dog, and if somebody has the time, if somebody has the time to commit to training the retriever, I promise it's just as rewarding as, it's probably more rewarding, honestly, if you can just do it on your own. But, understand that, typical families and, people that they don't have the ability to do that. And so what I've geared my program off of, and probably what 80 or 90% of my clients that come to me, is that essentially it's more of a kickstart, right? And so it's really our Gundog program. It's made up of, typically on average it's about 4 months. It can go longer. I've had dogs as long as a year before. It really just depends on what's the end goal for the client and what are they looking to get out of it. And all of this starts at the beginning in these conversations with these owners, which, I love talking to everybody, but it's a lot of these conversations that we have are essentially the same that I'm having with everybody. And so what I want to do is I really just want to bring it together and give these, give future clients an understanding of what they're getting when they bring their dog to me in Valley Way. We're not limited to where we only take dogs from our breedings. We recognize that there is a ton of great breeders out there. There's a ton of great dogs out there, and personally I love seeing the breed continue to improve, and some of the other great breeders out there, I love seeing what they're doing. So it's nice for me to see that. And it also gives me an idea of different, pedigrees and lineages to where I can kind of relate that to some of the dogs that I have as we continue to improve and get better. So, that's something that I try to encourage. So that program, so to speak, is that kind of 4-month base program. So for anybody that wants a hunting dog, that they may call me and say, hey, I work 50 hours a week. My kids are getting to an age where they want to start hunting, and we got a dog, and we really just don't know where to start. One of the things that I try to pitch to them, right, is that I can get the dog going and get them kind of that foundation piece so that they can start and really spend that time with the dog and dig in and understand, take what I've trained and then really take them to where they want to go. So, if you're looking for a true finish level retriever, you're talking on a minimum 12 to 16 months of training, easy. Not to mention the dog's got to mature to a level to where they can get to that. And I understand that that's hard for a lot of families, and I'm not asking anybody to do that. What I'm asking is let's get them to a level where you can take them to your hunting camp or your blind or the woods, and they're fully capable of being a pleasure to be around with your friends, where you can put them on a dog stand and they can enjoy it. But they can also come back to your home, and they could sit with your family on the couch and have that switch they can flip. So being able to come here for 4 months and kind of go through this 4 to 6 month program is really what we're going after. So once we come to that agreement, we decide, obviously, typically what I ask for clients is to try to call me as early as they can and let me kind of get them on my books, and we'll talk about a time for them to drop off. Normally I have a log, a book, where I try to keep people, I try to keep them informed. Most of the time I love when people call me when they're getting ready to pick up a puppy, or they've got one that's, maybe 3 or 4 months old and they're just kind of looking. I highly encourage people to come here to the kennel and come visit, see the property. Happy to show some of our other dogs' work so they can kind of get a good feel of what they're getting here. And, once we do that, we set a time for them to come drop their dog off. And, that's kind of where month 1 starts, right? It's taking the owners out. Let's show them the property. Let's let them see what they're getting. And then that first month is really made up of, number one is I've got to build a relationship with the dog. I've got to gain that dog's trust because I am a stranger. And, one of the benefits that I try to push for is that, I try not to fill my kennel with just, a ton of dogs. I try to keep it limited so that it's a little bit more personal. It's not overwhelming to the dog if they are maybe a little bit more timid. So it's something I try to take into consideration. So when that dog comes in on the first week, I'm typically spending time just trying to get them comfortable on a lead, on a leash. Most of the time, these dogs have never had any formal leash training. It's 98% of the dogs are just pulling them all over the place. And, that's kind of where they want, they want to get the dog where it's easy for them to take them on a walk in the evenings. And that's where they really struggled. And most of the time, that's where the first call that I get from clients is they say, hey, I can't even walk this dog because they're pulling my arms out. So, yeah, perfect example, right, is this morning, we had a client come in town. They're coming here for about 3 months. And their main focus in this situation is really just to get the obedience standpoint. And this morning, what we noticed is, number one, they had the dog on a harness, and the dog was just pulling her all over the place. And, and it's something that can be very overwhelming, especially to people, and it's tough. So today, one of the things is, that's when we start implementing and showing, a slip lead. And the slip lead is essentially where I'm able to give a correction to a dog that makes it uncomfortable for them to come outside of that kind of that window or that bubble that I like to say. And, I noticed today, the dog, June is the dog's name, and, we put the slip lead collar on her. I gave her a few good corrections, and, and she wasn't that bad. And so just something like that can happen so quick and so easy. Don't get me wrong, some of them are a lot harder than others, but, in this case, June is a pretty nice little dog, and I'm excited to have her here in the kennel now. So, with that, obviously continuing in with the rest of the first month, a lot of the first month is place work. With Boykin specifically, it's really hard for Boykins to get comfortable with being bored. So, sometimes I tell this a lot to people before they bring them here is that if they can just do place work, and it doesn't necessarily have to be on a play stand, just making the dog sit and be content is kind of that trains them to get comfortable with knowing that they can't just always be looking for something to do. A good example here is we've got Fancy here just sitting with me. The dog needs to be comfortable with laying down and just not really having to do anything and relax. That's when, but if I get out of this chair right now and I pick up a bumper, I promise you that she will be just as ready to go train as any of them. So, place work is kind of that foundation that I try to use, that we kind of roll into the, obviously into hunting, honoring, et cetera, and it'll also lead into getting the dog to deliver to heel. The place work aspect is monumental when it comes to showing a dog that they've got to have a spot. That's their designated location that they need to be on. I don't use the stay command just because sit means sit unless told otherwise, and we don't want to lose that. So focusing on that, and then obviously we're going to start showing them the whistle and a whistle set, and just kind of every time we tell them to say sit, and they sit. That's essentially month one. And month one is a lot of just trying to build a bond with the dog. I'm not very hard on them. I'm really trying to get them comfortable with me. So that's getting them comfortable walking on a lead with me and not pulling all over the place. That's doing place work. That's getting them familiar with somewhere that, a new place. Typically, that's an adjustment curve for the dog. And also it's incorporating them with kind of that group play with all the other dogs. That's, one of the things whenever we get done training in the evenings, with having a limited number of dogs, is I let everybody out to go run and play, and just kind of have that free time to let some steam out. And that's important, and to kind of help build that dog's confidence when you take them into public and other places. So in addition to month one of the really important factors is making the dog come to you, right? And that's what we call recall. Recall obviously can be used by the command here, It can be used, and essentially what we use is I use a combination of here and a whistle. You know, how we do that is once we get the dog that's really obedient on place and they've passed that is, all right, let's sit the dog on a place and then let's tell them to come here and then to come get on another place, right? So it's very easy, it's very structured, we're sitting in close quarters and it's easy for the dog to wrap their head around it. Eventually leading to the point where I could go out to the field, I can let the dogs run around, but if it comes to a point where I'm ready to go in or we need to call it a day, I can say here and I can give them a recall and they come back to me. So that kind of leads in, obviously, into the hold conditioning and the force fetch piece, because once the dog has finished on the table with force fetch and hold conditioning is we go to the ground. And when we go to the ground, we're going to revisit, you know, that recall drill, right? So we're going to put 2 place boards at 20 yards apart, and the dog's on place. I'm going to tell them to fetch up the bumper, and we're going to walk away at 20 or 30 yards, and we're going to give them that recall, the same drill that we did in month 1. But this time they've got a bumper in their mouth, and so they bring that bumper back to me, and they come back to that other place stand, and they give me a nice clean retrieve to hand. So that's kind of that step. You know, rolling into month 2 is when we start getting a little bit into the weeds. And in the weeds, you know, obviously we're going to continue the obedience throughout the dog's progression in the Gundog program, but, you know, focusing more on structure in month 2 is kind of where we're going now. And what it comes down to is that hold conditioning. You know, hold conditioning is, and it's essentially a level of force fetch where we're trying to teach the dog that, you know, bumper or whatever we put in the dog's mouth, whether it's a bird, a bumper, a ball, that they can't just drop it whenever they want. And we're going to loop that into the retrieval aspect to get a nice clean retrieval to hand. So, you know, some dogs it takes a lot longer than others. You know, I've had some that could go through hold conditioning in as little as 2 weeks, and then I've had some that it'll take a month and a half, maybe 2 months. And that's kind of where, during that second month of hold conditioning, right, I really want to give that dog the structure of knowing that they cannot drop it whenever we go to the ground. So obviously we're typically on a table. Once they get that to where they're comfortable on the table, they're not dropping it, they're fetching it when I tell them, very minimal pressure. Every dog is different in how they need to be trained, and I think it's very important for, number one, your trainer to be able to recognize that, and I also think it's very important that you as the handler recognize the limits that you can put your dog towards, right? You know, with force fetch and hold conditioning, I think some dogs just have a more natural hold than others. Some dogs I can just, you know, I can hold a bumper or a paint roller and, you know, they'll hold it in their mouth without any problem. There's some dogs that they think it is just the absolute worst thing in the world because they're not getting that retrieval first, which kind of implements kind of that force that we got to show them a little bit more structure on the front end. So for the dogs, it's a little bit tougher, right? And they don't have that natural hold. You know, you've got to implement a little bit of pressure to show them that once they do and they achieve the goal that we're wanting, which is holding it in their mouth, that the pressure's gone. You know, we're not hurting the dog, but just giving them something it's more or less just, it's more uncomfortable to where we can show them how much fun that bumper in their mouth can really be. And it's a process to get there, right? And so, you know, back on that, it's so important that the trainer and the owner recognize that each dog is going to be different, and that's where I try to provide value to clients by showing them, you know, they may have a more docile dog, and they may have one that may be a little bit more soft-hearted, and, you know, as opposed to some other dogs that, you know, you literally can't mess up. They've just got so much drive, and they've got so much, and I'll be honest, some of the dogs that's got some of the highest drive are some of the hardest to train because they have got so much go and they've just got so much energy. But, you know, so I try to help educate owners on the type of dog that they have and, you know, what they want to do. It's really more so saying, okay, well, the dog has the natural drive to retrieve, right? You know, that's, you as the owner spending all the time, you know, the financial commitment to find a good breeding and a good puppy. You know, if you've done your due diligence and you've found the puppy that you want, the dog is going to want to retrieve it. That's the easy part. But what you're going to find is when they get to be about 4 to 5 months old, they're going to go pick out a bumper and they're going to go run in circles, and they're going to do what we call a victory lap, and they're not going to want to bring it back. That's about normally when I get the phone calls from people, because the puppies are retrieving great when they're young, and then they hit that wall where they just refuse to bring it to them. And what I tell them is that's great. It's not a problem. If the dog is not wanting to go and retrieve and pick up a bumper, and you throw it out there and they'd rather go smell the grass and do it, that's where it gets tough. If the dog wants to go grab it and they think it's the coolest thing in the world and they're jumping around and they're running off, we can fix that through the process with hold recall and force fetch, right? That's why we're doing that. So when I'm taking a dog, when I'm ready to transition a dog from the hold conditioning table to the field, is essentially where I can tell it, take a paint roller or a bumper without any pressure and just hold it in front of their face and just say, fetch it up. And they grab it. Telltale sign is that tail's wagging for me. They're excited. I can walk on each end of the table. The dog is following me when I tell them to come here. They're fully capable of walking around with that bumper, and they've got the confidence, and they're releasing whenever I give them the command, right? That's when it's, okay, let's go to the next step. So every dog's different. I start and I do that for a few days, and then once I feel like the dog has got a level of confidence in doing that, I'll try a retrieval. Basically, I'll do a recall with a bumper, a hold recall with it in their mouth, and then when they bring that bumper back, I'll just kind of give them a short retrieve to the same spot they just came from. They run out and they grab it, they turn around, and I'm immediately giving them the recall command, and then they're coming back. So recapping there, right, is within that 2.5, 3 month range, right, is now we've got a dog that's doing a clean retrieve. They're running out, they're picking it up, they're coming straight back, and they're delivering it to heel. So the goal for that by the end of the 3rd month is to have a dog that is steady, number one. They run out, they pick up a bumper or bird, whatever it is. They can pick it up, they can come straight back to me, they're coming on my side, and they're releasing it they're releasing it on the command. So in addition to month 3 is when we get to some of the fun stuff for the dogs, and that's the birds, right? And that's where it's really fun getting to watch a lot of these dogs get to see birds for the first time, because it's, that's their instinct, right? That's what they're looking for, and that's what makes it fun. So, however, because Boykins are a little bit smaller, and that sometimes, especially if they're younger, is that you can't just take a dog and, throw out a mallard and expect them to pick it up. So one of the things that we do is I try to revisit and go to some of the smaller game birds, such as quail or pigeons or teal, to kind of help get that texture in their mouth. Same with the scent, to where it allows them to kind of get used to that in their mouth, to where it's not such a transition going into some of your larger game birds. So, I want to note, though, is one of the important factors that people don't realize is, you'll notice I didn't say doves. And, doves, most of you that are dove hunters, you realize that when you go pick it up, you've got feathers all over your hands, they're all over the ground, and what you're doing is you're taking a dog that's never had feathers in their mouth, and they run out and pick up a dove, and it just explodes in their mouth with feathers, and next thing you know, they have no idea what to do. So I try to push people to stay away from that, and also to be mindful if owners are planning on taking their dog on their first hunt, is a dove hunt, I can assure you they can expect some issues, because it's a big change for them. So, that's kind of part of that bird cycle that we use, working our way up into mallards. Obviously in the month 3, what I talked about is kind of getting more into the structure aspect, and that's what we call, pile work and, essentially trailing memories. And so what we want to do with that is we want to give the confidence. Month 3 is while we talk about the structure, is also giving the dog confidence. And giving a dog confidence is showing them that they can trust you to go pick up a bird or go pick up a mark. And in this case, essentially what we're trying to work towards is blinds. We get that, in a perfect world, they mark the retrieve, they go pick it up, but sometimes they don't always see it fall. And part of month 3 is, let's say you've got something that falls 30, 40 yards away. We want to get it to where you can at least line them up and send them, and the dog knows that they can run out there and they're trusting you as the handler, that they're going to go out there and find something. Now, part of month 3, with that being said, we start with what's called a trailing memory, where where we're taking a dog out, we're letting them see us put it down, but we're also not letting them pick it up, and we're walking back to a set location, turning them around, and we're sending them on the command. That's building their confidence to where it's not really a retrieve, but we're easing our way into essentially what's pile work. And so, the pile work there's a lot of different ways to do it. In this case, you can use buckets, you can use something that's essentially white. You can, white buckets, white stakes, anything that they can see that they're kind of using that as, okay, that's typically got a bumper at it, so I'm going to run that out. I'm going to run that line. So part of that month 3 is not letting them see the retrieve, getting them lined up, sending them out there. They go out, pick it up. They pick it up. They make the retrieve, and they bring it back. Towards the tail end of month 3 is when we start getting into trying to introduce that pile work and running blinds and giving the dog the confidence. So there is some overlap in there, and what's important is that you don't want to overdo it in pile work, because pile work is obviously not quite as fun as a nice retrieve where the dog can mark it and then go out and get it. So I try to offset that by I may run 2 or 3 marks and then give them one, I may run a blind for them right after. Now, on certain days where I may just solely focus on pile work, and as long as the dog is interested and the dog is having fun, I'll keep doing it. But it's important that you want to keep it fun for the dog, you as the handler. So that's kind of the holistic view of month 3. In a perfect world, by the end of month 3, we've got a dog that's capable of steady to shot. They can run out, they can mark a bird or mark a retrieve, they bring it back and deliver to hand. That's in a perfect world. It doesn't always happen by the end of month 3, but that's okay. And as we roll into month 4 is really when we try to focus in and show them kind of those hunt scenarios and really let them see kind of the aspect of what they're going to see and what they're bred for, right? So during month 4, we're going to kind of revisit some of the stuff that we did with 3, and that's pile work and the trailing memory. And month 4, I really want to focus on building that dog's confidence level and running blinds. Now, it's important that I want people to understand is that if you want a dog that will handle to a blind, essentially with casting and whistle sets, there's just not enough time to do that in 4 months. And it's something that we can do if an owner wants to pursue, and go further into that. But, for that 4th month in this program, what I'm pushing is that if we've got a dog if I want the dog to have full confidence in trusting you as the handler if you've got a down mark and they did not see it fall, you can line them up essentially 30, 40 yards, and you can send them, and they will run out and find it. It might take them a little bit longer, but that aspect, I still want them to be able to have that confidence. So essentially in 4 months, we can have a dog that's capable of going in the field, going to a blind, and picking up your birds and bringing them back to you, right? That's what I'm trying to focus on. With that, I want to continue the YouTube series and try to help educate owners, regardless if they bring their dog here for training. I want to help get everybody that, that has a Boykin to help get them to their full potential. And so with this training, with these training series that we're putting on the channel, I want people to feel free that they can reach out, they can comment and send us any messages or emails of any ideas that they have that we could do to try to help put some clarification on the breed or what they might be struggling with. So hopefully we can continue to get that feedback, like we have in the past, and look forward to providing more clarification on that in the future. So.